There are moments in life when something shifts so quietly that no one else seems to notice. The conversation continues, the room looks the same, the people around you keep speaking as if nothing has changed. Yet inside you something pauses. A feeling rises that you cannot easily explain. It is not fear, it is not imagination. It is simply a quiet awareness that something is different. You felt it. At first, you may have tried to dismiss it. Your mind searched for explanations that would return everything to normal. You told yourself that you were overthinking. You tried to convince yourself that nothing had really changed. But that inner signal did not disappear. It stayed with you, like a small voice asking you to pay attention. Many people experience this moment and ignore it. They move forward as if the feeling never happened. But there are times when that quiet awareness carries meaning far deeper than we realize. Sometimes your spirit notices what your eyes have not yet seen. Sometimes your heart senses a change before your mind understands it. Think about the moments in your life when you felt that quiet shift. A relationship that suddenly felt different. A situation that no longer carried the same peace it once did. A place that once felt safe, but now feels uncertain. No one announced that something had changed, yet something inside you recognized it immediately. This is the language of discernment. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It whispers gently to the part of you that is paying attention beneath the noise of everyday life. That whisper is not random. It often appears when something beneath the surface is beginning to move. The question most people ask later is simple. Was that feeling real? What if the moment you felt something shift was not confusion at all? What if it was awareness? What if the quiet signal inside you was revealing something before the situation fully unfolded? Because sometimes the first sign that truth is approaching is not something you see with your eyes. It is something you feel deep within your spirit. And once you begin recognizing that quiet signal, you start understanding something important. Discernment rarely arrives loudly. It begins in the quietest way possible. The quiet language of discernment. Discernment does not usually appear through dramatic signs. It does not arrive with sudden explanations or clear answers. More often, it begins as something subtle, a quiet feeling that something is slightly out of place. A moment when your heart pauses, even though the situation around you appears normal. Many people expect truth to reveal itself in obvious ways. They wait for clear evidence before trusting what they feel. Yet, the deeper language of discernment rarely works like that. It begins quietly, like a gentle nudge asking you to look more closely. You may notice a shift in the tone of someone's voice. You may sense distance where warmth once existed. You may feel tension in an environment that previously felt peaceful. None of these signals explain themselves immediately. They simply appear, asking your attention without forcing your understanding. This quiet awareness is often misunderstood. Some people dismiss it because they cannot logically explain it. Others ignore it because they do not want to believe that something has changed. Comfort can make us reluctant to listen when our inner awareness begins speaking. Yet discernment does not demand belief. It simply reveals. Over time, you begin noticing a pattern. The moments when you felt something subtle were often the moments when a deeper reality was beginning to move beneath the surface. What first appeared as a small feeling later becomes something clearer. Situations unfold. Truth becomes visible, and you realize that the quiet signal you felt earlier was pointing toward something real. This is why discernment is so powerful. It allows you to recognize movement before events fully reveal themselves. It gives you the opportunity to observe rather than react. It invites you to remain attentive instead of blindly continuing as if nothing has changed. But there is something interesting about how humans respond to this quiet awareness. Even when our spirit senses something clearly, our mind often begins questioning it. Why your mind doubts what your spirit feels. There is an interesting tension that happens inside every person when discernment begins to speak. Your spirit senses something quietly and clearly, yet your mind immediately begins asking questions. It searches for proof. It looks for explanations. It tries to return everything to the comfort of certainty. Your mind was designed to protect stability. When life feels predictable, the mind relaxes. It prefers situations that make sense, patterns that feel familiar, relationships that appear consistent. When something inside you begins sensing that a shift has happened, the mind often reacts by defending what feels comfortable. This is why many people doubt the very feelings that were guiding them. You feel a change in someone's behavior, yet your mind tells you not to assume anything. You sense distance where connection once existed, yet your mind tries to explain it away. You notice something small that feels different, yet your thoughts begin building reasons why everything must still be the same. Your mind is not trying to deceive you. It is simply trying to preserve the world the way it understands it. But your spirit notices what logic cannot immediately explain. Discernment often arrives before evidence appears. It recognizes patterns in tone, energy, presence, and intention, long before those patterns become visible in actions. It feels the direction of something that has only just begun moving beneath the surface. This is why that inner awareness can feel confusing at first. Your spirit senses truth while your mind is still searching for confirmation. Many people silence that awareness because they do not want to feel uncertain. They would rather believe everything is unchanged than face the possibility that something important has shifted. Yet when you learn to listen carefully, something powerful begins to happen. You start recognizing that the quiet signals inside you were not random emotions. They were early perceptions of something real beginning to move in your life. And when that realization begins forming, you start paying closer attention to something else as well. Because often, the first sign that something is changing appears in a place most people overlook. Energy. The moment energy changes before actions change, before words become clear, something else often shifts first. The atmosphere around a situation begins to feel different. The tone of a conversation carries a weight that was not there before. The presence of someone who once felt warm now feels distant or guarded. You may not be able to explain it immediately, yet you notice it. Energy changes quietly. It happens in the space between words, in the pauses that were not there before, in the way someone looks at you or avoids looking at you. Nothing dramatic has happened yet, but something inside you becomes aware that the environment is no longer the same. Many people overlook these moments because they expect change to appear loudly. They expect a clear statement, an obvious conflict, or a visible event that explains everything. Yet, reality often shifts beneath the surface long before it becomes visible. Discernment pays attention to these early movements. It notices when peace is replaced by tension. It notices when openness turns into distance. It notices when something that once flowed naturally begins feeling forced. These signals are subtle, but they carry meaning. The interesting part is that most people sense these changes without realizing what they are sensing. They feel uncomfortable, but cannot explain why. They notice the shift, but hesitate to trust their perception. Yet, those quiet observations matter. They allow you to remain aware without rushing to conclusions. They give you the space to observe how situations develop. They invite you to remain attentive instead of ignoring what your spirit has already begun noticing. And as you continue paying attention, another question begins to appear. Why do some people recognize these shifts immediately, while others seem completely unaware of them? Why some people feel these shifts more than others? Not everyone notices these quiet changes in the same way. Two people can stand in the same room, hear the same conversation, observe the same situation, yet walk away with completely different awareness. One person feels that something is different. The other continues as if nothing has changed. This difference often has nothing to do with intelligence or knowledge. It has more to do with awareness. Some people move through life focused only on what is visible. They rely entirely on what can be explained logically in the moment. If something cannot be immediately proven, they dismiss it. Their attention remains fixed on what appears obvious on the surface, but others listen differently. They pay attention to subtle signals. They notice tone, presence, and emotional shifts that many people overlook. They sense when peace disappears from a space that once felt calm. They recognize when a person's words say one thing, but their energy suggests something else. This kind of awareness often grows from empathy. People who have learned to observe human emotion carefully tend to recognize patterns earlier. They notice when someone is uncomfortable, when tension rises quietly, when intentions begin changing before they are spoken openly. Spiritual awareness can also deepen this perception. When a person becomes attentive to their inner life, they begin recognizing signals that are not loud or dramatic. Discernment becomes more sensitive. They notice small changes that others may not recognize until much later. This sensitivity is not weakness, it is perception. Yet with that perception comes responsibility. Feeling these shifts means you must decide how to respond to what you sense. It means choosing whether to ignore the signal or to listen carefully to what it may be revealing. And sometimes, that quiet signal carries a purpose beyond simple awareness, because there are moments when the feeling inside you is not only observation, it is warning. When your spirit starts warning you, there are moments when the feeling inside you becomes stronger than a simple observation. It is no longer just a subtle awareness that something has changed. It becomes a quiet sense that something requires your attention. You feel it before anything is openly revealed. A conversation leaves you unsettled even though the words seemed normal. A situation begins developing in a direction that feels uneasy even though nothing obvious has happened yet. A person you once trusted suddenly creates a feeling of distance you cannot fully explain. This is often when discernment shifts from awareness into warning. Not every warning appears as fear. In fact, the most meaningful ones rarely do. They appear as clarity rising quietly inside you. Something tells you to slow down. Something encourages you to watch carefully. Something inside you begins asking questions that did not exist before. These moments matter more than many people realize. When your spirit begins sensing that something is not aligned, it is inviting you to observe more deeply. It is not asking you to react in panic. It is asking you to remain attentive, to notice patterns, to listen more closely than before. Ignoring that signal often creates confusion later. Many people look back on difficult situations and remember a moment when something inside them tried to speak. A quiet hesitation before making a decision, a subtle discomfort around someone's presence, a small voice suggesting that something was not right. At the time, they dismissed it. They told themselves they were imagining things. They pushed the feeling aside because they wanted everything to remain as it was. Yet later, when truth eventually surfaced, they remembered that moment clearly. They had felt it before it happened. That is the nature of discernment. It rarely forces your attention. It simply places awareness in front of you and allows you to decide whether you will listen. And when people begin understanding this, they often recognize something else about their past experiences. The problem was rarely the signal. The problem was ignoring it. The mistake most people make when that quiet signal appears, most people do something almost automatic. They begin explaining it away. The mind starts searching for reasons to make the feeling disappear. You tell yourself you are imagining things. You convince yourself that you are overthinking. You remind yourself that everything looked normal just a moment ago, so the feeling must not mean anything. This is the mistake many people make, not because they lack awareness, but because they want comfort more than clarity. Accepting that something has shifted can require difficult decisions. It may mean recognizing that a situation is changing. It may mean acknowledging that someone's intentions are not what they once seemed to be, and people resist that realization. So they silence the signal. They ignore the feeling. They continue forward as if nothing has changed, hoping the discomfort will disappear. For a while, it may seem easier, but truth has a way of revealing itself eventually. What was once subtle becomes visible. Patterns begin forming. Conversations unfold. Situations develop in ways that make the original feeling suddenly make sense. And that is when people remember the moment. They remember the quiet awareness they felt earlier, the small hesitation that appeared before the situation fully revealed itself. They look back and realize that the signal was already there, gently asking for their attention. The pain many people experience later often comes from this realization, not because the situation happened, but because they remember feeling it long before it became obvious. This is why learning to respect discernment is so important. It does not mean assuming the worst. It does not mean reacting quickly or judging others harshly. It simply means acknowledging the signals that appear within you and allowing them to guide your awareness. When you begin doing that, something changes inside your perspective. You stop ignoring the quiet voice that notices shifts before they become visible. You begin trusting the awareness that has been developing inside you all along. And once that trust begins forming, a different kind of courage starts growing as well. The courage to trust what you felt. There is a kind of courage that does not look dramatic from the outside. It is quiet, steady, and deeply personal. It is the courage to trust what you felt when everything around you tried to convince you that nothing had changed. Trusting discernment often means standing in a place of uncertainty for a while. You may not have all the answers yet. You may not be able to explain what is happening to anyone else. But something inside you continues pointing toward the same awareness. That awareness asks you to pay attention. Sometimes, trusting that feeling means slowing down when others expect you to move forward quickly. Sometimes, it means observing a situation more carefully instead of rushing to conclusions. Sometimes it means creating distance from something that no longer feels aligned with your spirit. These choices are not always comfortable. There are moments when people around you may not understand why you are cautious. They may not see the subtle shift that you sensed earlier. From their perspective, everything still appears normal. But discernment does not always reveal itself to everyone at the same time. This is why trusting what you felt requires inner strength. You are not reacting impulsively. You are not creating conflict. You are simply respecting the awareness that appeared within you before the full picture became clear. Over time, something interesting begins to happen. The more you respect that awareness, the clearer it becomes. You begin recognizing patterns faster. You begin understanding situations more deeply. What once felt like uncertainty slowly becomes quiet confidence. You realize that the signal inside you was not confusion. It was perception. And as that perception grows stronger, the moment eventually arrives when everything begins to make sense. The situation that once felt mysterious begins revealing itself openly. Truth has a way of doing that. When the truth begins to reveal itself, there comes a moment when what you felt quietly inside finally becomes visible in front of you. It may not happen immediately. Sometimes it takes days. Sometimes it takes months. But eventually, the situation begins unfolding in a way that confirms what your spirit sensed earlier. You begin noticing the patterns more clearly. The tone you once questioned now becomes obvious. The distance you once felt quietly now appears openly. The behavior that once seemed subtle now reveals its direction without hiding behind uncertainty. And in that moment, something inside you becomes very still. Not because you are surprised, but because you recognize the feeling. You remember the moment when something first shifted inside you. The quiet awareness that tried to speak before the situation fully revealed itself. Now, the pieces begin connecting. The small signals you noticed earlier suddenly make sense. The hesitation you felt begins to feel justified. What once seemed difficult to explain now stands clearly in front of you. This is when many people pause and reflect on their own perception. They realize that the feeling they tried to ignore was not imagination. It was awareness, noticing the first movement of something that had not yet become visible. Truth rarely arrives all at once. It unfolds gradually, allowing those who are paying attention to recognize it step by step. Discernment simply notices those steps earlier than most people do. And when that understanding settles inside you, something deeper begins to form. You stop questioning whether the feeling you had was real. You begin understanding why you felt it in the first place. The reason you felt it. There is a reason those moments appear in your life. The quiet feeling that something shifted was not random. It was not confusion. It was awareness rising from a deeper place within you, asking you to look more closely at what was unfolding around you. Discernment exists to protect clarity. When something in your environment begins moving in a direction that does not align with truth, peace, or sincerity, your spirit often senses that movement before your mind understands it. It recognizes patterns beneath the surface. It notices the change in intention, tone, or presence that words have not yet revealed. This awareness is not meant to create fear. It exists so you can remain attentive. It allows you to observe situations more carefully. It invites you to move with wisdom instead of reacting without understanding. Many people believe discernment is about predicting the future. It is not. Discernment is about recognizing the present with deeper awareness. It allows you to see what is forming before it becomes obvious. It helps you remain calm when others are confused because you sensed the shift long before the moment fully arrived. And that is why the feeling mattered. It was the beginning of understanding, the quiet signal that something in your life was beginning to change, the moment when your spirit noticed movement that your eyes had not yet seen. So when you look back on that moment when everything felt slightly different, remember something important. You were not imagining it. You felt it because something truly had shifted.